Right then, Manchester United currently sit 8th in the Premier League table. They've secured 15 points in their opening 10 matches. Maybe lucky to even have that tally. Of course, a lot of criticism thrown Ten Hag's way after their lacklustre, to say the least, performance against Manchester City on Sunday. Now, he was asked on playing the same football he did at Ajax, and he said, "We will never play that football. This is also not why I came here. We're playing different football than I showed at Ajax because I have to, because I can't play the same way. The players decide how you play. We play much more direct football here because I have the players for that here." Oh, good. Here we go. Right then. So, Jules is here with us, Mario as well. But let's start off with, shall we, with Manchester United's #1 fan, biggest supporter. Always glass half full. Sunshine. Mark Ogden is here. Mark, what on earth is he talking about?
I don't know. I think he's making it up as he goes along. I mean, in terms of his... Well, I mean, look, he's talking about not having the players to play a certain way. And he gives it away at the end by saying they play a more direct style at United. Well, the only way they've had results this year is by simply putting Scott McTominay up front and hitting it long and hoping to get some knockdowns. And that is basically how he's got his wins this year. So I don't see any kind of plan or any blueprint or any sign of progression. Now, there was a little bit of progression last season. They beat Man City in the derby in January. They won the Carabao Cup in February. But since then, it's just gone off a cliff. And there's no obvious pattern of play. He's signed players that are either not playing or not playing well enough. He's playing a right-footed centre-back at left-back and leaving a left-back on the bench. I really don't know what his tactics are, what his plan is. And, you know, during the game yesterday, United clearly had problems on the right-hand side of the pitch. He did nothing about it. So, for me, he's come to the Premier League with a big reputation at Ajax. But I don't see him at any stage having a game where he's outfoxed a tactical, you know, an opponent tactically, or he's pulling off a great, you know, substitution. I just think that the more we see of Erik ten Hag, the more we're thinking, is this guy really it? You know, is he really at the same level as Guardiola, Klopp, Tuchel, Pochettino, Postecoglou? Name them all. I just don't think he is. And I think all those guys have got the charisma as well to match the job they do. And sometimes you have that charisma, you can sell your projects a little bit better. Ten Hag's got no charisma. He's not selling his projects. And all he's getting at the minute is bad results. And it was interesting at the weekend because he was booed quite loudly by the fans for taking off Rasmus Højlund and booed at the end of the game. That's a bit of a first, and when that happens, you know, the results are going against him and the fans are beginning to turn against him. He's safe for now because of what's happening upstairs, but it's not looking good for Ten Hag, and I don't think he can sustain this kind of form for long without inviting the questions about his future.
Why is he safe for now, Mark?
Well, because if you look above him at the club, you've got people that would ordinarily make the decision are in no place to make a decision. So the Glazers are basically locked with an internal squabble between themselves as to what to do with the club. Do they sell? Do they take investment? Do they keep a stake? Then you've got Richard Arnold and John Murtagh, the chief exec and the football director, who, with all due respect, they know that Sir Jim Ratcliffe is coming in at some point to take over football operations. So they're thinking, well, what is my future here? So their priority right now is to think, what about me? What am I going to do? Am I going to have a job in 6 months or not? So their focus isn't right now on changing the manager, because if Jim Ratcliffe is coming in with the ability to change football operations, then this current regime are not going to change things. So there's a sense of drift. United are in limbo right now because nobody at the club can make a decision or is prepared to make a decision. They've got different priorities. Now, there's a bit of briefing going around that Jim Ratcliffe will not sack Ten Hag. He's happy with what Ten Hag has done. I'd ignore that completely because every manager is safe until he's not safe. And as soon as Jim Ratcliffe walks in the door, if Man United continue to lose games and fall further and further off the pace, he has to make a statement, he has to make a change, a display of intent. And the easiest way to do that is to change the manager. Now, I'm not saying it's going to happen straight away, but if results continue as they are, Erik ten Hag is really on a shaky situation at Man United.
Mark, he had money in the bank, as you say, beat City last January, won the Carabao Cup. We thought, OK, first, and progressed from there, basically. Yet it's regressed so quickly. Why?
Look, I mean, in his defence, there have been injuries. You know, Luke Shaw's been out virtually all season. Casemiro's been injured. Varane's been injured. Rasmus Højlund came and was injured. But I just think that, you know, United should have a squad deep enough to cope with those problems, especially when some of the players we're talking about didn't play a lot last season, or certainly injuries caught with them last season as well. So I just think the players are confused. They don't quite know what he wants them to do. And I think, look at Marcus Rashford, for instance. He's got 1 goal all season and 1 assist. His body language is terrible against Man City yesterday. It's been terrible all season. What is Erik ten Hag doing to get Marcus Rashford back on track? Where's his motivational skills? For me, Rashford looks like Fernando Torres in his final 6 months at Liverpool. He looks like.
But why is that Ten Hag's responsibility and not Marcus Rashford's, Mark?
Well, because Erik Ten Hag is the manager. He's there to motivate the players and to find a way to get the best out of them. That's his job. He should be finding a way to get Marcus Rashford performing as he was for that 3 months last season when he was scoring goals. He has to find a way to get the right players alongside him. He's got to find a way for Rashford to find the pass that gives Rasmus Højlund a chance to score a goal. I just don't think Ten Hag is getting the best out of his players, because look around the pitch. Which of his players are playing well? None of them. And that's because he's not giving them clear instructions. He's not putting the best players on the pitch. That, yesterday, for instance, in the derby, he left Rafael Varane out of the team for tactical reasons, played Johnny Evans. Now, I think Johnny Evans actually had a good season at Man United, but it's not Rafael Varane, and it's not the derby against Erling Haaland. So he didn't explain those tactical reasons, but that was his explanation, that it was a tactical decision. So, and again, he explained the Reguilón situation and putting Lindelof at left-back for tactical reasons. Well, what tactical advantage do you get from playing a slow right-footed centre-half at left-back against Man City? So he drops these little lines out saying it's for tactical reasons, but doesn't explain it. So if we're all confused, I'm sure the players are confused as well, because they're playing as though they're confused. They're not playing with any clarity.
Jules, what's Varane thinking, sitting on the bench watching all this play out?
I don't know, I have to be honest. I didn't understand the choice. I'm sure Rafa himself didn't understand. I don't know if he got any explanation from Ten Hag or not. It didn't make any sense. It didn't make much sense that Mason Mount, who has hardly played really this season, comes on at half-time for a game like this when you go down and you need something a bit special, and yet you put Mason Mount on the pitch. I think he touched the ball like 12 times in the 45 minutes or 50 minutes that he was on the pitch. So you played with 10 men really when Mason Mount came on. So there's a lot of things on top of what the boys have just said, a lot of things that Ten Hag is doing that he's not helping himself. And for me, the line about I can't play like Ajax because I don't have the same players. When you've just spent 500 million, including 150 million pretty much, on Anthony and Onana, who you had at Ajax. You signed Onana to make him hoof the ball up forward on Højlund yesterday in that game, when he's the best ball-playing goalkeeper in the world, maybe, surely. Imagine telling Onana, listen, this is the game plan today, right? You see how good you are with the ball at your feet? Well, all I want from you is just kicking as long as you can, as far as you can, towards Højlund and McTominay up front, and see what can happen from that. I mean, come on now.
Anthony has got to epitomise everything that's been wrong with Manchester United for a long time, isn't it, Mark?
Well, I don't think it's just him. There's plenty of that epitomise. I mean, Casemiro was signed. He wanted Frankie de Jong and he signed Casemiro because he waited too long to sign de Jong. Now, Casemiro and de Jong are different players. Casemiro hasn't got any legs anymore. He can't get around the pitch. So they signed Sofyan Amrabat to play alongside Casemiro, who also can't move around the pitch. So he's identifying players that can't run. And what you need in the Premier League is players with energy and pace. So you look at Anthony and, he's got a bit of pace, not a lot, but he's been a disastrous signing. And, Ten Hag will keep defending him because he was his target, but they paid way over the odds for him. He's not delivering. And you've got another issue as well with Jadon Sancho. And I think, I'm hearing there's a bit of misgivings about, is that situation being managed as well as it could be? Ten Hag really took a gamble there by, outing him as not training well. It really blew up in his face. And, Sancho's reaction was wrong, but it's now nearly 2 months. And again, I get back to what I said before. He's paid to manage these players. He's managed the situation so badly there that he's got a £70 million player that's not kicking the ball. He's just sat there doing nothing. So all these players that have been signed by Man United and by Erik Ten Hag, really, you can basically say that maybe a couple of the players have done well. Martinez has done well, but he's injured now. And I think beyond that, I'm really struggling to find players that have done well under Ten Hag, apart from Højlund, who looks okay. But again, it's early days, so he has to take a lot of the responsibility. He's not blaming the owners, but I think it's happy for the ownership situation to be used as a defence. The owners didn't pick the team yesterday, pick the tactics. That was down to him.
The big concern, isn't it, that Mark highlights, is that everyone that goes into Manchester United seems to get worse.
Yeah, and that's not a good sign for the manager. That's not a good sign for the club. And I have to imagine if you're a Manchester United fan, and let's say you're a reasonable Manchester United fan, you knew that there were going to be some issues because of the situation overall about the club. And you're willing to accept some inconsistencies, if you will. A tiny bit of inconsistency. But you want to see progression. And I think that's fair to expect from the team. And Mark just mentioned that. that same reasonable Manchester United fan, I imagine, last year at some point was probably laughing at the Chelsea fans and Chelsea as a whole. Manchester United right now are trending much more so in the direction of Chelsea and what Chelsea has become than anything else above them. That's who they're becoming. We're talking about bad signings and players not performing and money being thrown around to try to resolve the problem, and that's not working, and the manager's not working, and there's an ownership issue as well. It's Chelsea all over again. And so here's the bad news for that reasonable Manchester United fan. It's going to continue to get bad. It's going to continue to get worse before it gets better. That's a scary thought.
What's it like going into training, do you think, Shaq?
Horrible. I think everything about it. Driving through town and you're seeing Manchester United fans and understanding their disappointment, and you arrive there and everybody's looking for somebody else to blame. Thankfully, Ten Hag is there and taking the brunt of it, certainly from the outside. From a player's perspective, I don't think it gets any worse, especially when you're at a club like Manchester United, where the history and expectation dictate so much differently. And to Ali's point, I was thinking exactly the same thing about Chelsea. I remember a month or two ago, I said, listen, despite the spending, we've got to start talking about Chelsea as a mid-table team. And Manchester United are right there now, to the point where looking at the Premier League table and looking at where Manchester United are, looking at that performance against Manchester City, and there is nobody above them that would be that negative, that directionless. Newcastle were very defensive against them and only lost 1-0, but I thought you won't see that from Newcastle again. Brentford, one of the best counter-attacking teams in the league, so while they may sit back, you know what they're about, their style of play. Another criticism of Ten Hag's. West Ham, also good on the counter-attack. You saw that against Brighton. So really, if you name of the club apart, spending apart, Manchester United sitting in 8th are overachieving. That is how bad Manchester United are.
Yeah, and to your question about the locker room, when it gets this bad, the tendency in locker rooms is not to come together. No.
You're looking after number one.
Well, it begins to separate. It begins to fracture. When you need the group to be together, when you need everybody to rally around a common cause, when something like this is happening, the tendency is for the locker room to start going like this. People go their separate ways because, indeed, they're looking for number one. And how do I survive this? Not how do we survive this, how do I survive this? And how do I save face in what is otherwise a forgettable situation? That's going to be difficult for Ten Hag to figure out. Even beyond figuring out what happens on the field, keeping the locker room together is going to be just as tough.
Last point on this, Mark. If not Ten Hag, then who?
I mean, that is a good question, because there isn't really anybody out there you'd think is ready to come into the club. I mean, you look at people like Roberto De Zerbi. Would he want to go to Man United right now? I know it sounds crazy, but would he want to leave Brighton for Man United right now? Because you go to Man United at the moment and it's a career cul-de-sac, isn't it? Who comes out of that club better at the moment? Nobody. So obviously managers have big egos and they always think they can turn the corner, but you've got to look at what you're working with. You look at the people above you, look at the squad you've got. So, I mean, United are really struggling. You look around, that a coach that's got a big reputation is going to look at Man United and think, I don't really want to go there right now. They might just want to wait and see, if the new regime, it's not even a regime, is it? If the new shareholders come in and do a better job. But they're stuck with Ten Hag, and I think the problem is, I think the club is beginning to look too big for Ten Hag, but there isn't anybody out there that you can say right now is equipped to take it on, because they're all in good jobs, better jobs.